Up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC. We're finally to episode 100. I think it's a fitting episode to be previewing Rivalry Week, one of the best weeks in college football. It's hard to believe we're already to the end of the regular season, but we get to soak in one of the best weeks on the calendar this Thanksgiving week and leading up to Saturday Rivalry. Saturday, got some really good matchups on Thursday, Friday, and obviously Saturday this week. So gonna be a lot of fun and soaking up this last bit of the regular season. I just want to throw this out before we kind of get into breaking everything down. But this is our 100th episode. We started doing this together before the 2021 season. And Georgia has lost a total of one football game since we've been doing this together. So if this isn't if that's not an initiative for Georgia fans to tune into this podcast, then I don't know what is, because Georgia's lost one game in 3 years and 100 episodes of us doing this. So Dog fans, get in here. Looks like they're 11-0. Going to be playing for the SEC championship again a week from this Saturday. So Dog fans, get in here. Y'all have only lost one game since we've been doing this. So, but kind of crazy. We've already made it to 100. But I do want to, break down last week's games. Obviously, really the shocker, definitely of the weekend, but of the season. Man, I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. New Mexico State comes into Jordan-Hare and leads with a 31-10 victory. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I was at a wedding this weekend, or I was in a wedding, my cousin's wedding this weekend. So right before we had to go up and take pictures, I checked my phone. The game started, so I'm watching it on my phone. And Mexico State drives down the scores. I'm like, oh, all right, well, they're pretty good. I mean, they had 8 wins on the year, 8-3 coming into the game. And then Auburn just looks like they're lost, like they're sleepwalking out there. I thought, all right, well, it's early. Not a huge game, whatever. We'll figure it out. Well, then I had to go up for groomsmen pictures, and I had to go for family pictures, and I had to go for the wedding party pictures. So, like, the whole game I didn't get to watch. And then the ceremony started at 4, so I'm not watching it there. Get back down to the reception. I check my phone, and it says 17-7. I'm like, oh, Lord have mercy. Then it kept going on, and it said 24-10. I'm like, Auburn's about to lose this game. And then at the final, they let them score with under 2 to go, and they end up beating Auburn 31-10. But it was, of all the games this season that I was like, yeah, Auburn's going to win that game. It was the first 2 weeks and then this week. And I was proven wrong big time, because obviously no win's an easy win, but everybody thought that Auburn was going to win this game. Auburn should have won this game. But the opposing team, their quarterback played outside of his mind, had 3 passing touchdowns. They ran the ball for 213 yards, which was more total offense than Auburn had. So they ran the ball for more total offense than Auburn produced. So it was just not a great game. A bunch of receiver drops. Our defense, or Auburn's defense, honestly, they got shredded. I haven't seen a team move the ball on them like that other than LSU, and LSU's understandable, one of the best offenses in the nation. But I have not seen them get the ball moved on them like that all year. It was kind of – that was a head scratcher, a little frustrating, because it's like, man, these guys have been so lights out. They've been the mainly only high point of the season is watching the defense play every week. And the last 3 weeks leading into this game, Auburn was just building. Everybody's saying they're peaking, but it happens. It's happened to other people. Doesn't mean that Hugh Freeze doesn't know what he's doing. Doesn't mean the Auburn program's doomed forever. Now, I mean, in 4 years, we'll look back and see, how it really affected. But there's been multiple coaches lose games early in their tenure in a rebuild. I mean, you look at Steve Sarkisian, he lost to Kansas, albeit it was by a point, I believe. It wasn't by 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, whatever it was, 3 touchdowns. So there's obviously, roadblocks in the rebuild year, but this was not supposed to happen. Obviously, it's college football. Anything can happen, but that is not good. It is bad in every facet of how you view the team. Even in a rebuild year, that just should never happen. However, it did. I'm not saying fire Hugh Freeze. I'm not burning the house down. I said in the preview, 6 or 7 wins. 7 was a ceiling. Auburn's not going to get 7 wins this year unless they just do something magical. which can happen. It's the Iron Bowl. It's in Jordan-Hare, so a lot of crazy things go on there. But I just, again, like we said last week, Auburn is who we thought they were, and so I'm not freaking out, losing my mind over it. Yeah, it's frustrating. It wasn't fun to watch. Like, upsets you a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're going to be okay. They don't have the horses they need right now to be where the expectations are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think long term it doesn't. I don't think it changes the outlook of anything. I mean, obviously,
It shouldn't.
Was it embarrassing? Absolutely. I mean that shouldn't happen, especially in the manner in which it happened. I mean, because Auburn still got a more talented roster than New Mexico State does. Yeah. So I mean, obviously that was just one that they just weren't ready to play. I mean, plain and simple, it happens sometimes. It does, and when you're not ready to play, and Auburn doesn't really have the talent to get away with not being ready to play.
Right.
Some teams, are sleepwalking, some Saturdays, and they have enough talent that they can get away with it a little bit. It always catches up with you, but when you're for example, Alabama playing Chattanooga, they're talented enough they could have afforded to sleepwalk through the game a little bit and still won comfortably. That's not something you will make a habit of, but as far as long term, I don't think it changes much. I mean, they're still recruiting at a high level, obviously. I think the biggest thing, I mentioned it to you the other day when we discussed this a little bit afterwards, was, going into this year, I think with the roster, the shape it was in, and having to fill so many holes at one time, obviously Auburn had to take a lot of, group of 5 transfers, even though these are, talented guys. But typically you wouldn't want to take those type of guys in bulk like they had to. You would rather, obviously high school recruiting is going to be your main tool, and then obviously supplementing with Power 5 transfers and then some select group of 5 or junior college type of players. But I think in a normal circumstance, they took way more of a group of 5 type of player than they would want to regularly. So I think that's something that's going to be different going forward, and the roster's not going to be in the kind of shape where they have to do something like that. Because like I said, even though some of these guys had success and been solid players, but they're still not top of the SEC caliber of a player. So, but yeah, I don't think it's going to affect a whole lot. I mean, obviously it does put a damper on the way they have been playing, and even though they were beating teams and that were at the bottom of the SEC standings, they had still built up some really good momentum that you were going to be feeling good, headed towards a bowl game in the next season. But it kind of just shows you, honestly, the shape that a program like Arkansas is in or Mississippi State's in, and Vanderbilt, obviously, because I mean Auburn absolutely throttled those teams. Arkansas in particular. I mean, they absolutely blew Arkansas's doors off. So it kind of shows you the shape that maybe some of those other programs are in too. But yeah, I think they're going to be just fine. But yeah, in the moment, it's always, it's embarrassing. There's no doubt it shouldn't have happened, but it did. And I expect a much better effort this week, obviously. I mean, as you mentioned, to pull an upset, it's going to take a, 100-fold effort and executing to be able to pull it off. But you never know. I do think they'll turn the page quickly, and don't really know how to go. You can't ever really predict this game, so I don't see them being able to pull an upset. Just because some of the Auburn teams in the past, decade or so that beaten Alabama, those have had a lot better horses on it than this team does. Maybe for a little bit, but I just don't see them being able to hang in really for 4 quarters, just because I just don't think they've got the horses at this point to be able to pull the upset. But you never know. Crazier things have happened. The 2021 team wasn't playing very well either, and almost pulled it off at home. So, yeah, you never know. There's really no predicting rivalry weekend.
Here's my prediction. It's going to be Auburn's going to play them close early in the game. because the juices are going to be flowing. It's at home. They're going to have the crowd in their favor. And then Bama's going to pull away, and they're probably going to win by 2 or 3 scores. That's what I honestly think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Honestly, I mean, I think especially too, and you mentioned too, it'd be one thing if Alabama wasn't, playing very like if Alabama was kind of coming in sputtering a little bit, you could say, okay, well, we see it, but I think the way that Alabama's playing specifically on the offensive side, the way they've been able to really find some things ever since the bye week, really, and kind of the second half of Tennessee. Ever since then, the offense has seemed to have a much better flow to it. So, I think considering the way Alabama's playing right now, if that were to continue, yeah, I think it'd be hard for them to hang in for 4 quarters. But like I said, the crowd's obviously going to be in it. Energy's going to be there from the jump, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's rivalry week, and you can't ever take anything for granted.
Yeah, I'm going to watch every snap. I'm going to be invested in every snap. I'm going to scream when Auburn does bad. I'm going to scream when Auburn does something stupid. I'm going to be in my mind, Auburn's going to win every game that I turn the TV on and watch, because that's what a fan is. There's a reason you're called a fan. It's fanatic. Whether you, again, I said I was going to be realistic all year, but there's still that hope of the fandom in there. It's like, oh, Auburn's going to win this game, and you want them so badly to win it. So it's going to make the game no different to me and to any diehard fans out there that are listening to this podcast, no matter what rivalry week you're in this week. Whether you're going to play Louisville, you're going to play crosstown rival Florida State, whatever team that you're in, it's whether you think you're going to win or you should win or whatever, good year, bad year, there's always that hope and that belief that, yeah, they're going to get it done. This has happened this many years ago. It's the 12-year anniversary. Our quarterback wears number 12, all that stuff. Everybody buys into it because everybody wants it and they believe it, and that's just what makes sports great. So it's going to change the game absolutely zilch for me. I'm still going to love it, live and die by it. But then once it's over, whatever, it's over, and I'm not going to, kill myself over it or punch a hole in the wall or do anything crazy like that. So it'll be all right.
Well, kind of moving on with rivalry week a little bit, the team I do feel for a little bit this week is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, because they've got the number one Georgia Bulldogs coming in there, coming off an absolute thrashing of Tennessee.
Y'all are going to listen to me when I tell you to bet on Georgia. I don't do it often, but when I do, I make money every time.
Well, I will say betting on Georgia in the first 100 episodes of this podcast has been pretty successful for people who have done that, considering they've only lost one ball game since we've been doing this. But kind of a crazy, a little bit turn of events. You had Tennessee take the opening play of scrimmage to the house, Jalen Wright, a long touchdown run. But it was short-lived for Tennessee because it was all dogs the rest of the day. As we've talked about, really the entire season, Carson Beck has just played terrific. Not only have, people thought, okay, he's replacing Stetson Bennett, first-time starter. Not only has he not been a liability, they're featuring him now. I mean,
oh, yeah.
This is as balanced an offense in the country. I've always loved the way Georgia sets up their offense. They utilize play action really well. Obviously, we know their running backs, they can get downhill. Their offensive line's as good as anybody in the country's. But they're just so balanced. They use play action well. Love how they utilize the tight ends, which is easy to do when you have 19 on your team. But they do a great job of spreading the ball around. You're saying like Ra Thomas and Dominique Lovett. I think those guys are coming on the scene more and more. I mean, we know what kind of talent those guys are. So they're just a really fun offense to watch. Like I said, I love the way they set up their play action, use their run game. They're just as balanced as anybody. Obviously, we know what their defense is. It's always one of the tops in the country. They just play such good complementary football, and Carson Beck just continues to get better and better, playing mistake-free football for the most part. And he's been excellent. That offensive line gives him a clean pocket, and he knows exactly to go with the football, and he's extremely accurate. So, it's kind of what I expected from them. Obviously, They rebounded pretty quickly from that first Tennessee touchdown and pretty much thoroughly dominated the rest of the day. But looks like they're going to be undefeated, head to the SEC championship game. And man, I'm just excited for this week. We have so many games, playoff implications. I mean, we haven't had that Saturday, that chaos Saturday yet. We've been really close. I mean, it's been a tease the last couple of weeks. We've been close to a couple upsets here and there, but just hasn't happened yet. I would anticipate it happening. I think there's some games within this conference this week where teams are on upset alert, but I don't believe Georgia's going to be one of them this week.
No, absolutely not. I got a Thursday night Egg Bowl, one of the greatest. I mean, it doesn't get enough love as one of the best rivalries, probably because Mississippi State's been down the last few years. But this game, it always gives you something that you can write a story about or you can talk about for the next few weeks. I mean, you go back to think about the Ole Miss player costing them the game, taking a dog leak in the end zone. I mean, this game is just unreal every single time they play it. But Ole Miss is going to Starkville, freshly out of a head coach. They're fresh out. And Ole Miss is only a 10-point favorite. Put the house on it. I told you this last week. I said take out another mortgage and put it on Georgia. And nobody sweated that bet, not one time. If you took Georgia, you were hitting it from the second drive on. It was happening. Hammer Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin is going to go in here and stick his foot so far up the Mississippi State Bulldogs' rear end that it's going to be lost for a couple of weeks. All right, it's going to have to be surgically removed. I'm telling you, Ole Miss -10. Lane Kiffin's going to embarrass them. They hate each other. It's happening. Ole Miss -10. Thursday night, enjoy your Thanksgiving with your family while padding your pockets, eating food. And that's a dream job right there. Eating Thanksgiving turkey dressing, padding your pockets while you're eating.
Yeah, I mean, because Ole Miss lost this game last year, right? Because it was Mike Leach's final game. You know, he went out, beating Ole Miss. So,
and it ain't happening this year.
No, I don't think it's happening this year at all. No, I like Ole Miss a lot in this game. Like you said, though, this is always a fun one. I mean, always something unpredictable or something, something you're not expecting happens. So, yeah, I'm with you, though. I like Ole Miss here. I like Ole Miss to roll. I think, it'd be huge for them. Get back to 10 wins. Huge accomplishment again for Lane Kiffin. They get to 10-2. They're setting up for a really, really nice bowl game again. So that would be a heck of a season for Ole Miss. I think part of the reason is probably a little bit lower. There's some questions about Jackson Dart's health. They weren't sure, his availability for this game. But I think it sounds like he practiced yesterday. I think it looks like all systems go for him. As far as that goes, I think he did get a little banged up in their last game. So that may have a little reason for it being a little bit lower than maybe some would expect. But from what I've heard, it sounds like he's going to be practicing, or he is practicing, and he should be able to go in this game. And the way he's been playing, the way that offense has been playing, I think they'll put up some points in Starkville.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that 10 is way too low. Jump on it tonight while you can.
I'm very interested, though, in this Missouri-Arkansas game. That's always a Friday afternoon game. This spread's actually a little bit lower than I anticipated. It's 7.5 right now. Missouri's a road favorite over Arkansas. Arkansas definitely showed more life last week, and maybe they'll have a little bit more, spirit. I mean, Arkansas's AD came out, so they are going to keep Sam Pittman. They're committed to him being the head coach. Kind of seemed like it was leaning that way the last, few days or so because they hadn't made a move yet. So I would expect a good effort out of them, but I do think 7.5 is a little bit low.
Yeah, I would take Missouri if I'm betting tonight. I don't know if I'm going to bet that game or not, but if I do, I'm taking Missouri for sure. If it goes up to 10, anywhere 10.5 and under, I'm probably taking it.
Yeah, I think Missouri, obviously, though, it was a really tight game with Florida. End up basically kicking the game-winning field goal to beat the Gators in Columbia to get to 9-2. So it'd be huge for them, obviously, to get to 10 wins. They were remaining in the top 10, obviously, would be just ginormous for them this year. But another game I want to talk about this week that I'm super, super interested in is a game of backup quarterbacks, but Florida and Florida State. Florida sitting at 5-6, got a top 5 team coming to the Swamp. It's sold out night game. I think Florida's got a real shot here. I know you don't want to see that because you got that under 5.5, but I really do believe they got a real shot here against Florida State. It will be huge for them to, get to bowl eligibility. For Billy Napier, they've got a really great recruiting class coming in next year. I think it could give them a little boost going in to year 3, getting this kind of win at home to end the regular season, and obviously make a bowl game, which would be critical for them as far as their bowl practices are concerned. But what's your feel on this Florida State game?
I think if Florida can run the ball well, they have a really good chance because they got a really good stable of backs. It's just relying on that defense. If they can keep Florida State at, not at bay, I guess you would say, they're not going to stop them for sure. Even though Jordan Travis is out, this is a really good football team. I think Florida State, they know the importance of this game. Obviously, it's the rivalry game, but they know the importance in it and what it means in their season because they understand that they're in a Power 5 conference, and if they win out, regardless of what happens, if they win out undefeated, they're going to be in. You're not going to let a team that goes undefeated not be in the playoffs. They can say that they get the best teams all they want, but it's more or less the most deserving team. So that's what, if they understand they're controlling their destiny right here. I get they don't have Jordan Travis. It's definitely a big blow. I mean, huge blow. We all understand how important he is to this offense, but they can run the ball well. They've got insane talent on the edge. I don't think that they're going to miss that much of a beat, especially against the Florida teams whose defense is not that spectacular. But if Florida can run the ball consistently and keep drives alive and break off a couple big runs, I think that's the only thing they have a prayer in keeping them in the game because I don't know how good this Florida defense is going to hold up, even with Jordan Travis being out.
Yeah, it's definitely a big concern. I mean, obviously they've had a lot more success at home, so it gives me a little bit more confidence. I'm not super confident that they'll pull it off, but I think it's a real chance just with the amount that's at stake. I mean, really for both teams, obviously Florida State's in the playoff race and going to the ACC title, but I do think for Florida to kind of be able to spoil that party, I think there's going to be a lot of motivation there. And obviously on their side, they're trying to go to a bowl game and obviously not where they want to be, but I feel like it will be a big springboard for them, going into bowl prep, going into the off season with a really good recruiting class on the way. And that's really what, as we've talked about, that's really what Billy Napier's future is going to be tied to, is the success of that recruiting class and how they can, continue to improve, into year 3. But think there's going to be a lot of motivation on Florida's side, same with Florida State. So a lot at stake for both teams, but for different reasons. So I think it's going to make it highly interesting. Always a fun matchup to watch. And I'm really curious to see if Florida can get it done and kind of throw a wrench in the playoff race. Because if Florida State goes down, that'd be the really first domino in the Wild to fall. So I'm definitely going to have my eyes on Gainesville Saturday night.
A game I'm going to have my eyes on when it comes to betting is LSU minus 11.5. I think they're better than Texas A&M. I know how these games have gone in the past, 4 or 5 different overtimes with 150 points scored total, things along those lines. LSU is going to do their absolute best to make sure that Jaden Daniels walks away with the Heisman after this Saturday. They are going to do everything they possibly can to make sure that he 100% has the Heisman in the bag. If you ask me, he's the best player in college football right now. I would have said Brock Bowers, but Brock Bowers had to miss a little bit due to injury. Jaden Daniels has not looked bad one single time. In their losses, he still looks outstanding. I say the worst he's looked was against Florida State, and he didn't even look bad that week. The team just kind of quit is what it looked like. We talked about that obviously way back in week 1 or 2, whichever week that was. I believe it was week 1, but I think LSU covers 11.5 against A&M. And I think it's solely on the back of Jaden Daniels because they are going to do whatever they can to get him the Heisman. They might put up 70 points themselves, all of them from Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, last week obviously it was Georgia State they played, but they put up 56. And Jaden Daniels said like he was trying to break Joe Burrow's record of I believe it was 8 touchdowns. He tied it. He went 25 of 30, 413 yards, 6 touchdowns, 10 carries, 96 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So yeah, I think he should win the Heisman Trophy. I don't care if he has 3 losses.
No.
I think he's been the best player in college football this year. Week in, week out, I think he's been as consistent as anybody, and put up absolutely video game numbers more often than not. So he would have my vote for the Heisman. I've said that for weeks now. I definitely think he's going to New York for sure. I think it's going to come down to him or Bo Nix or Michael Penix. I think it's going to be one of those 3. And I think I think it's going to come down to Jaden Daniels and whichever quarterback wins that Pac-12 title game. So I think it'll be Oregon. Like I think Oregon will win a rematch against Washington if I just had to put money on it or put a prediction in tonight. So I will say I think it's going to come down to Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels, but and Bo's had a great year, and so has Penix. But I just think Jaden Daniels has just been the best player in college football this year, and
by landslide.
Yeah, I mean he really makes that offense go, and they're super talented regardless. But the way he can operate that offense, how accurate he is with the football, the dynamic running ability he brings to the table, it just makes that offense so difficult to defend. It puts you in such a bind. The entire time you play them. So, yeah, he would have my vote for the Heisman if I had one. I think he ultimately may end up bringing it home, but I think they may hold the 3 losses against him, which I think's a little ridiculous. But I think his numbers may be so much better that they can't ignore it. But I think it'll come down to him or one of the Pac-12 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. What's your thoughts on South Carolina only being a 7-point dog to Clemson? 7-4 Clemson, 5-6 South Carolina. We saw what happened last year. South Carolina played the best game they've ever played in their lives. They were flawless, forced turnovers, didn't make mistakes on offense. I mean, you had Spencer Rattler looking like the Heisman finalist last year in this game. At South Carolina, Clemson's 7-point dog or 7-point favorite.
Yeah, I'm really torn on this, honestly. I mean, it's kind of a not as drastic, obviously, but kind of I feel like a similar setup to Florida and Florida State. I know Clemson's got multiple losses, but you look at South Carolina sitting at 5-6, obviously be huge for them to get to bowl eligibility. It's at home, it's a night game. They're coming off a nice win over Kentucky, which was good. But Clemson's been playing really good football here the last several weeks. I mean, obviously they've had a rough year, specifically by their standards. I mean, we're used to Clemson, being in the top 5 or 10 in the country. For the last 3 weeks, they've been playing really good. Obviously beating Notre Dame, then playing well against Georgia Tech and North Carolina. So I would lean Clemson to win it here, but I do think it's a similar setup to like the Florida State game. I think South Carolina is going to play really, really well. I think there's going to be a lot of motivation on that side. Obviously, it's a rivalry game regardless, but I would lean Clemson slightly, but I think it's going to be a really competitive game again.
Yeah, I would lean Clemson on the sole fact of Clemson's defensive front. They're waking up. They're pretty good. And South Carolina's offensive line looks the same as they did week 1. Got the same complaints about them. I think they're going to dominate in the trenches, and that's what's going to let Clemson win this ball game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think Clemson's going to be a little too much up front. Obviously, if Spencer Rattler, if he can have another game, like he did a year ago, I think that go a long way to helping South Carolina pull another upset. But I think ultimately if Clemson was still playing like they were a month ago, I would definitely lean more South Carolina's direction. But the way Clemson has started to play over the last 3 or 4 weeks, kind of turned that corner. I think they're a more talented team, and I like the way they're trending right now. I think they're going to end it on a positive note, but there's going to be a ton of motivation for South Carolina there to get this one done and get the bowl eligibility after a really rocky start for most of the year, and they're playing much better as well. I mean, they've won 3 straight, after losing 4 straight previously. So they're playing their best ball at this time as well. But I think Clemson's going to be a little too much in the end.
All right, I got a question for you. It's the time of year where coaches are getting fired, coaches are getting put on hot seats, coaches are reclaiming their standing with their fans. They're bettering their standings or they're worsening their standings. But of all the people being talked about prematurely being fired at these schools and people losing their minds over a coach that's been there 2-3 years, like Napier. You heard a couple people about Hugh Freeze already this year. I mean, it's insane. And then you get people let go Jimbo Fisher gets let go. Granted, it was after a long time. And then Mississippi State lets their coach go, Arnett. And so of all the coaches being let go and of being put on the hot seat, the one name I haven't heard, which deserves this talk around them more than anybody, is Lincoln Riley. That dude has done so little with so much. And it's like he gets scrutinized by certain people, but not near as bad as these guys that are in here year one and they're acting like, oh no, the world's ending. And I understand it's only year 2 with Lincoln Riley, but his team looks the exact same as it did at Oklahoma. 0 defense. He has a Heisman quarterback in the backfield, and he's failing miserably. I don't know what he needs to understand to change his philosophy and to change it up a little bit, but he's got to do something because Lincoln Riley, in my opinion, I'd have fired his ass yesterday. I mean, this is atrocious, dude. I mean, have we seen UCLA came out and said they're going to fire Chip Kelly, and then UCLA hung 38 on him. I believe it was 38-24, something like that, beat the brakes off of them. And it wasn't even as close as the scoreboard predicted. I mean, they dominated that game from the jump. And no one's batting an eye at Lincoln Riley. Oh, he's fine. He's the offensive guru. No. He inherited a much better situation, had a lot of roster overhaul, but inherited a much better situation than a lot of these coaches that are getting canned or getting talked about being canned. I mean, Dabo Swinney's had his name brought up. Dude's won championships. This guy's done nothing. Lincoln Riley's been to the playoffs, ain't won nothing, ain't won in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He is on the hot seat for me, and I'm speaking for both of us for Saturdays in the SEC. He's hot seat number 1. Get him out.
Yeah. Yeah, he's on our hot seat. He may not literally be on the hot seat, but he's a guy that should be on the hot seat. And we talked about this several weeks ago with them. Obviously, Alex Grinch finally got fired a few weeks ago. You want to talk about an atrocious defense coordinator. Alex Grinch is him. He's finally gone. But I'm going to be honest, it's a lot more than just Alex Grinch, honestly. I mentioned this several weeks ago here. I think Lincoln Riley needs to call up Ryan Day and ask, Ryan Day, what did you do to your program last year? Because you've seen a mentality, a culture shift around Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State's winning games this year that they never would have won in the past. I mean, they've got one of the best defenses in the country. I mean, this was a defense a couple years ago that looked maybe not quite as bad as USC's, but pretty bad. Like, they were not good defensively. Like, even under Urban Meyer, under Ryan Day's first few years, I mean, they just weren't like a great defensive team. Right. I mean, this year they brought in Jim Knowles. It was better last year, but it still wasn't where it needed to be. And then here in year 2 under Jim Knowles, they've been outstanding, one of the best defenses in the country. I think there was a lot of talk around, Ohio State not being physical enough because you've seen Michigan bully them the last 2 years. I think Ryan Day did an excellent job of looking his program in the mirror and saying, okay, what do I need to change? Like, we need to have a mindset shift of like, we got to be a more physical football team. We got to be better on the defensive side of the ball. And they actually put resources into making that better. Lincoln Riley has not done that. And until he does that, you're going to get the same results you've been getting, regardless of who the defensive coordinator is. Like, they can go hire a better defensive coordinator, but until they really put an emphasis and a focus into it, you're going to get the same results that you've been getting. So,
Charmin soft.
I tell you what, he's got to do a deep dive into it this offseason and make a concerted effort to change that side, a mind shift, a culture shift to that direction. Because if he doesn't, it's just going to be status quo there. I'm not sure he will do that. It's a little, to be determined. Maybe this will be a wake-up call. But as you said, he's had great offenses. He's coached great quarterbacks. But he's never going to win big unless he gets his defense better and
Right.
much better, too. So I'm not sure that it will happen. It was kind of funny that you mentioned the UCLA as well, because, there was that report going into the game last week that if they lost, they were probably going to fire Chip Kelly. And then obviously after the game, Dan Mullen tweets out from the ESPN studios and said, "Are we sure the right coach is on the hot seat in LA?"
Yeah.
He may have. Dan Mullen may be spitting there, honestly. Like, obviously, with the kind of money and stuff of Lincoln Riley, it's still pretty early in his tenure. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But theoretically, he probably should be on the hot seat, and he's going to get his chance. He's going to get chances to correct this and see if he can improve it. And it'll remains to be seen if he'll do what's necessary to change it. But I'm not certain he will. Maybe he'll, I really don't know how stubborn Lincoln Riley is. Is he adaptable enough? I think we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. How happy is LSU that they didn't end up pulling the trigger on him, or he didn't accept the job? Because that was pretty much where everyone was shooing and he was going to go, was LSU after he left Oklahoma, and he went the complete opposite direction, opposite lifestyle for sure. But yeah, I agree.
He was ducking the SEC.
Yeah, I don't blame him. His teams are baby soft. I don't care what you say. I understand losses can get emotional, and you're putting so much into these games. But the moment that I was like, this is a soft program, was when Caleb Williams jumped in the stands and was boo-hooing with his mom about losing a game. Like, I get it. You're putting so much into it. When my career ended in baseball, in my last game, I walked off the field, I cried like a baby in my mom's arms. But doing it after a midseason loss, acting like your life's over, do that in the locker room. Don't portray it to the world. I understand he was upset. He was emotional about it. But you're just portraying soft. Like, you're done. It's over. You're crying because you know it can't be fixed. And you're like, my last year is wasted. Like, baby, soft, Charmin soft. That's when I knew there was a problem down there, when I saw Caleb Williams boo-hooing in the stands.
Yeah, I could see it a little bit more if it's like a Tebow situation where you're like undefeated and you get beat like in the conference title game, or something like that. Yeah, but I believe I'm not mistaken, that was after the Washington game, which was their third loss.
Yeah.
At the time. Well, now they're 7-5, so and then we'll see where they go for a bowl, but not sure they're going to be very motivated to play in that either. So. Yeah, it's they're gonna get restless there. And nowadays too, the leash is so much shorter than it used to be. The era that we're playing in. Guys are, people are, want instant success, obviously, and when you have a little taste of it and then you revert right back to, a 7-5, potentially 7-6 season, you're like, man, people get sick of it pretty quickly, especially when you got Caleb Williams under center.
Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting to see if he makes that commitment to really change. You would think he would certainly move in that direction. Surely this is enough of a wake up call, but we'll see. But yeah, it got ugly the back half of the season in LA.
Yeah, bad, and it feels. Every time you watch them, it feels like the team's just giving up. Like, they're just, season's over. There's nothing to play for. It's just, no mental toughness down there, and you can see it with the performance on the field every single week.
I got to get your thoughts. Obviously, the biggest game of the week, Ohio State, Michigan, always has playoff implications on the line, Big Ten title implications on the line. Feels like both these teams are always coming in undefeated. Um, Michigan obviously has won 2 in a row. After Ohio State's dominated this series for much of the last 20 years or so. Do you like Michigan to get 3 in a row? It's in the big house, or do you think Ohio State, with their defense being as improved as it is and being one of the best defenses in the country all year long, do you think Ohio State's able to break that cycle a little bit, or do you like Michigan to go 3 in a row?
I like Michigan to go 3 in a row. Big thing is it's at home, but Michigan can run the ball. I don't care what defense it is. Michigan's going to get theirs. They're going to put points up on the board. They're going to find a way to move the ball. I just am not that confident that Ohio State can do that. If this was any other Ohio State offense in the last 20 years, I would say give me Ohio State every day and twice on Sunday. But this is not the same Ohio State offense that we're used to. They can't bully you up and down the field offensively. They can't drive up the field at will and answer every single time that you score. They make a mistake. They just aren't that offense this year. Understand their defense is fantastic, but Michigan's got a pretty damn good defense as well, and they can run the ball. They're going to wear Ohio State's defense down. And like I said, they're going to get theirs. Just like we talked about with LSU a bunch this year. They're going to get theirs. Whether they win or lose, they're going to light up the scoreboard. And I just don't think that Ohio State is going to be able to match that with Michigan. I think offensively they're a step behind this year, and I think that's going to hurt them because, like I said, Ohio State's got the better defense in this game, but Michigan's defense is not bad by any means, and Michigan's offense is much, much better and much more suited to win a game that this type of game is going to take. I believe it's going to be a real physical game and a lot of run game, a lot of the balls on the ground, or running using the ground game. What I meant to say. So I think Michigan's going to edge them out. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think it's probably going to be like a 24-13, 24-17 type game, but I think Michigan finds a way to get it done and ends up pulling away late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I'm probably leaning Michigan as well. I do think J.J. McCarthy's going to have to play better than he has the last few weeks for them to win this game. It feels like the last 3 weeks or so he hasn't really been as sharp as we've seen. I will say this, though. I think I like Michigan to win slightly, but I think I'm just, from a playoff perspective, I think I would rather play Michigan than Ohio State, even though, because I feel like it's kind of like a year ago, because a lot of football, we know it's about matchups, you know. I just think Ohio State at their best would be scarier to me than Michigan would be. Mm-hmm. Even if that makes sense. And a lot of it's to do with matchups because you saw last year, and I know Ohio State isn't as explosive on offense as they are a year ago, but you saw in the playoffs when you've got weapons on the outside like Ohio State has, like it takes those kind of weapons to beat some of these elite teams like a Georgia. Like Ohio State was one of the few teams that had a chance because they had the weapons to be able to threaten you. So I do like, from that standpoint, I do like Ohio State. They scare me a little bit more from that standpoint just because they got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Ibuka, and they've got skill players all over the place. So a matchup with Ohio State would scare me more in a playoff scenario. But I do think Michigan, with it being in the big house, I think J.J. McCarthy plays a little bit better. I think they find a way to win. I do think Ohio State is much more suited to have a shot to win this game more so than the last 2 years because I do believe they've gotten a lot better on defense. I think they're a more physical team now. And if Kyle McCord can play a really good game, I think they're going to have a great shot. Going to be super, super interesting, obviously. I mean, it's a playoff game, plain and simple. I mean, the loser is going to be out. The winner's going to be in the Big Ten title game. So, I mean, it's an elimination game, basically. I mean, it's a playoff game without the title. But that's kind of what we come to expect with this game, because this always has playoff implications and obviously Big Ten championship implications on the line.
And it's the last year before the Big Ten gets shaken up. I mean, they're adding a bunch of teams. They're taking away the divisions. It's going to look a lot different in the next few years after this year. So it's one of the
Speaking
last
of Lincoln
games.
Riley, he's going to the Big Ten, so he's definitely got he's got to get his
He's
defense
got to get
corrected.
better. Yeah.
Like, it's only getting harder from here for USC. I mean, and UCLA, who just smoked them the other day, is also going to the Big Ten, so they're going to have to continue to play them as well. But I mean, you're definitely stepping up. And the Pac-12 has been pretty good this year, though. But Oregon's going, Washington's going as well. So you're going to the Big Ten to face some really good teams in the Big Ten, but you're also bringing some of the Pac-12's best teams along with you. You're going to have to play, maybe not every year, but you got the big three of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. Iowa's had a pretty decent year. So, I mean, some teams that could give them some problems if they don't really improve their defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really excited for this week. Like I said, we're due for a chaos Saturday a little bit.
I hope Auburn helps out with that.
Well, they might. I mean, you never know, man. Iron Bowl is crazy. But I think we got some really good games in store. I'm gonna be looking Friday. You got Texas and Texas Tech. You got Oregon State. So you got a couple, potential slip ups there that could cause a little chaos. I believe both those are double digit, underdog or favorites in that case. But still gonna be bearing to watch because, as I say, you really can't predict, rivalry week. Seems like we always get some results that we don't expect. So gonna be a lot of fun. Hard to believe we're at the end of it, and we'll be playing conference title games next Saturday. But the playoff race, as it stands right now, is pretty much the same 1 through 8. It's hanging in. We did have one shift tonight. We're actually recording this Tuesday night. Washington jumped Florida State, so Washington's at 4, Florida State at 5. Top 3 is still Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State, or Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, I believe. And then you've still got Oregon at 6, Texas at 7, Alabama at 8. Not going to get into it a whole lot, but I think Texas and Alabama ought to be ahead of Oregon, in my opinion. I would have Texas at 6, Alabama 7, Oregon 8, just due to the fact of Oregon currently doesn't have a ranked win. I mean, their best win would be Utah, who just got thumped and bumped out of the top 25. You look at Texas and Alabama. Texas has 2 ranked wins, obviously head-to-head over Alabama, and Alabama has 3 ranked wins, and a similar loss to Oregon with losing to Texas. Oregon lost to Washington. So I do disagree with that. I don't really understand the reasoning for having – and I know eye test-wise, Oregon looks great, but in my opinion, I would have Texas 6, Alabama 7, Oregon 8. I don't really get the reasoning behind that, but usually these things have a way of working themselves out. I do think, as I've been saying, I think we're due for a chaos Saturday. So it'll more than likely work itself out.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to the Oregon State game because Oregon State could get them. I don't think they will, but I think they're the most gettable team this weekend is Oregon. I really do.
I would love to see that. I mean, as far as playoff scenarios go, that would be nice because I really feel good about Oregon winning a rematch with Washington.
Yeah.
So I feel like if that were to happen, Oregon loses this week, wins next week, that pretty much eliminates both Pac-12.
I don't think if Oregon loses this week, I don't think they're in the championship game. They
may not be. I think if they lose and Arizona wins, Arizona goes.
Yeah.
So
Oregon has to win to lock it in. You're right. That if they lose and Arizona loses, they're still in. But if Oregon wins, they lock it up for sure. But that they very well could put themselves out of the race for both championships.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest. One of the stories of the year is that Arizona team. I mean, they came in. I think under over
3.5. I think.
Yeah, 3.5 coming in the year, and they're still alive for the Pac-12 title game. So
shout out
Arizona. Yeah, they've had a really great year, and if Oregon loses and they're able to win this week, then it beat Arizona State, they'll they'll go to the Pac-12 title game and play Washington. So, yeah, I think if you're an SEC perspective, whether it's Alabama or Georgia, if you could have a little chaos in the Pac-12, I think that would help out a lot. Obviously, if a team like Florida State goes down, they've still got obviously Florida and then Louisville, who's a top 10 team currently in the ACC title game. Texas has still got to play a pretty highly ranked team in the Big 12 title game. So there's a lot of potential for some movement left. And I feel like if you're both Georgia, obviously if you're Alabama, you want some of those teams to accumulate some losses. But I think Georgia as well, if Georgia were to lose the SEC title game, I think they want as much chaos as possible. That way they could still possibly get in if they were to lose.
Yeah.
So, and I really feel this. I've heard a couple people say it, and we'll get into the SEC title game next week, obviously, and have a deep preview on that. But I really feel that may be the national title game. Honestly, yeah. I think the winner of that game is going to be the odds-on favorite to win the whole thing. So, like I said, this Michigan-Ohio State game, it's a playoff game without the title. Same thing with the SEC championship game. It usually works out that way. It's a quarterfinal playoff game, basically, and I think the winner is going to be the betting favorite probably, and I think ultimately the odds-on favorite to probably win the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So it's going to be super interesting these next 2 weeks. Appreciate everybody tuning in for 100th episode. We can't wait for the next 100 episodes. And we will catch you guys next week after Rivalry Week. Break it all down.
Thank you, guys.